Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with If I Could Choose Only One Work by Composer X, it would have to be Work F. Well, Composer X is Malcolm Arnold. And Work F, well, we all know, no, we don't. It's the Fifth Symphony, one of the great symphonies of the 20th century, and one which is oh so characteristic of the composer. Malcolm Arnold we've talked about a little bit because Naxos, thank goodness, has a box of all the symphonies, which we should all hear. There's a Malcolm Arnold cycle on Chandos. There was another one on Conifer, which seems to have disappeared. And of course, there are performances by the composer himself. Malcolm Arnold was a trumpeter originally in the London Philharmonic or the London Symphony or one of those London orchestras, or all of them. You never know with those London orchestras. And he had a very turbulent life. He was a manic depressive and had, multiple suicide attempts and difficulties in his personal relationships. And it was rather sad, actually. But through all that, he managed to compose a boatload of music, a lot of which is marvelous. He had a very characteristic style, which mixed modern sounds and modern concepts of harmony with popular music idioms and wonderful tunes and pop tunes, dance hall tunes, jazz tunes. He could do all of that. Really kind of amazing. He really was an eclectic composer in the best possible sense. He's most famous for two things. The first is his film score, because he wrote tons of film music, really good film music. He did the film score to The Bridge on the River Kwai, that famous movie which had the Colonel Bogey March in it, which is actually by Kenneth Alford. But people kind of thought that Malcolm Arnold wrote that. But the famous tune in The Bridge on the River Kwai was not by Malcolm Arnold. It was by Kenneth Alford. But it's still a great film score. And then the other work that classical people know are his English dances, which was his answer to the Brahms Hungarian dances and the Dvorak Slavonic dances. And they're just as good. They're wonderful. I've played them. One of the things that really makes Malcolm Arnold's music so marvelous is that he achieves unbelievably vivid, rich, bright sonorities using perfectly normal forces, very limited forces even. We did the English dances. It's just double winds and percussion and nothing fancy. But because he uses the orchestra in such a soloistic and virtuosic way, the result always sounds new. It really does. He was a trumpeter. It makes a difference because his brass writing is fabulous, and he always gives the brass plenty to do, and the woodwinds, so that when you have an orchestra where the strings don't dominate, where the brass and the woodwinds have every bit as much to do as the string sections, then you have the possibility of amazing feats of timbral originality. Because, the difference is that the strings are basically a homogeneous body of instruments, right? They all sound the same. Basically, as a group, they all blend and sound the same, and they work as a body. But the woodwinds and the brass are all distinctive voices with their distinctive sounds. And so not only do you get the opportunity to have marvelously colorful solo licks, but all of the combinations are going to create different shades of colors. That's why, as I've always said, great orchestration always depends on how composers treat their woodwind sections, for the most part, in the classical and romantic periods, because that's where the color lies. And Arnold was very conscious of that and really gifted in creating these marvelous colors. And he did the same thing with the percussion section, too. He used a lot of tuned percussion, bells and things. And, they could get the tune for all you knew. It was wonderful. The Fifth Symphony is a case in point. It illustrates that wonderfully characteristic style beautifully. He does use the strings for the gorgeous, sentimental, some people would say tacky tune in the slow movement that comes back at the very end. Arnold always said that in moments of great emotion, we resort to cliches. We turn to musical cliches, and that's what he does. And that's his style. And you may like it or not, but it's very, very effective. It's wonderful. But he also has passages, for example, the harp and the celesta, soloistically, or harp and other things, or marimbas, or I don't know what they are. I have the score over here. I can take a look. but the instruments that you don't expect to get solo thematic material do. And they're juxtaposed. I mean, in the first movement of the fifth, you've got the harp doing things, and then you've got the brass doing things, and the strings are just sort of plonking along underneath for now. And so you have a completely different balance of tone. And that's what makes the piece so interesting. The scherzo is particularly wonderful. It's based on the main theme of the first movement. And, it comes back in the scherzo. The whole piece is thematically very well integrated, but it sounds like, shopping in a mall during Christmas. It just goes, with the woodwinds at the top. It's marvelous. Absolutely marvelous music. And there's so much of it, and it's so good. But as the one characteristic piece that has to survive, I would hate to choose. I would choose the Fifth Symphony because he was a masterful symphonist, and that may be his best work of all of them, although they're very, very good. I mean, for the most part, they really are. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.